With less than 1 week left until the crucial 8th of May election, mere days really, political parties are now feeling the pressure, trying to woo those last undecided voters. The three biggest political parties are hosting their final campaign rallies this weekend. But have the smaller parties made an impact to influence voters? For more on this, I'm joined by Tebogo Tshego. He's the CEO of Tshego Media. Tebogo, thank you so much for joining us. The guest I spoke to just before you spoke about the smaller parties and whether they could bring meaning or could have a meaningful following or support come Wednesday's elections. From your point of view, in terms of the campaigns that we've seen run their course, have we seen the smaller parties really making an impact with the kinds of campaigns that they've decided to run in the run-up to these elections?
Now, firstly, I think we would declare how do voters make their choice and make it as simple as possible. That firstly, it would be your promises, secondly, your credibility, and thirdly, your reach. Now, it's more complex than that. But if you look at those basics, I think the smaller parties have not done well specifically on social media. But I think what is interesting is Irvin Jim's Workers' Party, the SRWP. They've got 1.6 million members of NUMSA. And who could potentially vote for the SRWP. And so I think on the ground mobilization, they've done very well. But if you then look at social media, how they've been making an impact, it is not reflecting that 1.6 million people. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they won't get the votes. Now, in terms of the other parties, you have the United Democratic Movement, you have the National Freedom Party, you have the Freedom Front Plus, and the IFP, who are also contesting the elections. And in the 2014 elections, they came 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th. So I think from their perspective, I think it's a bit divided. From the perspective of Instagram and YouTube, you won't see many of those parties there. But they are on Twitter and Facebook. Now, what's interesting is that YouTube is the biggest, second biggest social media platform in South Africa with 9 million subscribers. So you have to ask yourself, what is the data that the political parties have that they're not using that platform?
I suppose the question then will be, can we actually use those figures as a way to survey the temperature, the political temperature in the country, if we don't know how many of those social media users are actually eligible voters?
Well, that's very interesting. Now, usually the social media would not allow you to register if you're under the age of 13. So we can assume that the majority of the people on social media are 18 and above.
And can afford expensive data. Absolutely.
But you know what's interesting is that in the 2014 elections, you had over 646,000 people between the ages of 18 and 19 who were registered to vote. That has decreased by 44%, with approximately 343,000 people who are currently registered to vote who are 18 and 19. Now, this is despite the fact that young people are more active on social media and voicing their opinions out, but that is not reflected in how they've participated in the elections.
Now, if you look at much bigger and more powerful countries like America, for instance, I mean, there you'll hear people saying that money wins elections and wins campaigns, because that has a direct impact of the kind of campaign you can have and how broad it can be in terms of impact and the reach, as you spoke of. Are we seeing that in South Africa, that money spent on campaigns is equating to more votes? And do we have an understanding of how and where that money is being spent?
It is true, but I think it would also depend on what the money is spent on. Now, the biggest mistake that South African political parties make is that they don't spend enough money on the research. So gaining insights as to what are the issues that the voters are more interested in. So that is why you'll find that the message that they're communicating sometimes has very ridiculous political jargon, like the proletariat and the bourgeoisie. And people don't want to be communicated with like that.
I feel like you're subtweeting somebody now.
Yes, someone in specific, but I'm not going to mention them because the elections are around the corner. But I do think that they need to speak the language of the people. And in speaking the language of the people, it's not just about the specific language, but also understanding what the people want. And I think from that perspective, they need to spend money on that. Now look at the Freedom Front Plus. They communicate majority in Afrikaans, which is okay, but they are not alienating the voters who would understand English and some of the other languages. So I think political parties also from a language perspective need to be more representative of all the 11 official languages.
Before I let you go, you said earlier that you felt that the smaller political parties didn't use social media as well as they should have, because we all know that that doesn't really cost a lot of money. You can have a very simple campaign, a digital campaign, and reach a lot of people.
Absolutely, and look at what Donald Trump has done with Facebook. Now they've banned people like Alex Jones because now we're leading up to the 2020 US elections. So in South Africa, I mean, social media is a low-hanging fruit, and as you said, it's not very expensive for you to
boost your post or sponsor your post.
Yes, so I would say to political parties that they need to now look at all of the social media platforms and start to invest money in their election campaigns as a supporting tool, as to what they're also doing on the ground and also with the posters that they've put up.
And research as well.
Absolutely.
We're going to leave it there. Fascinating. Tebego Ditsego from Ditsego Media. Thank you so much for joining us. And